Leading with Culture is brought to you by Maslow Leadership. Visit maslowleadership.com.
Welcome to Leading with Culture. This is your host, Timothy Tiryaki. In this episode, I will be talking to Claude Silver. Claude is a role model in pioneering what we call humanizing leadership and organizations. Claude is the Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia. She defines her role as working for 1,600 humans and being in touch with the heartbeat of every single person in the company. The Chief Heart Officer role was created to ensure that VaynerMedia's employees have a place where they can find a home. Through 15 to 30-minute meetings, they gain clarity and they leave with a newfound path to a solution, which in turn creates success for them and VaynerMedia. The presence that Claude brings to her conversations is remarkable. She shares her guiding questions as, how do I hold space for people? How do I make it not about my agenda, but about the other person? Once more, welcome to Leading with Culture. Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of Leading with Culture. Once more, I am very excited, especially excited for this episode because I have Claude Silver today with us, the Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. And I'm really excited to have you here, Claude. How are you?
It's great to be here, Tim. I'm so looking forward to our conversation ahead. Thank you.
Me too. And I know we share a lot of interest in humanistic psychology, positive psychology, transpersonal psychology. And today I look forward to geeking out with you on what's informing the behind the scenes of our, I believe in our own words, our shared kind of a vision on humanizing the workplace, bringing the heart into the workplace culture and seeing culture as not a side thing, but one of the main competitive advantages of an organization. So I really look forward to our conversation.
Likewise. Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Wonderful. Well, although our listeners heard about a formal introduction, but I would love to hear you introduce yourself on who is Claude and what does she do?
Well, my name is Claude Silver. I'm the Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia. I've been here for 8.5 years. I'm also a fairly new mom. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old daughter. So that is brand new in my life. And I'm relearning every day about how to parent and also how to be a child at the same time. My passion really is human behavior and understanding the whys, why we do certain things. And what I've noticed in my journeys is the patterns are very, they have a common denominator, usually per person. While each and every person is unique, and I like to see the individual in everyone, I also look for the patterns when I'm working with such a scale as 1,800 people every day. Actually, it expedites some problem solving and solution finding when I can look at things at scale, just as when I can look at things on the micro and really help an individual with a certain challenge that they might have. So I'm all about psychological safety in the workplace as a starting point for connection and belonging, and excited to be here with you.
Oh, so am I. So your message really inspires many, and I follow you on LinkedIn and follow your different podcasts you join, conferences you speak at, and I look forward to exploring your message and bringing it to our audience as well. But let's start with a question. What does a Chief Heart Officer do? What is your day-to-day like?
That's a great question. You know, there was no other Chief Heart Officer before me. So when I asked Gary Vaynerchuk, our CEO, how do we know if I'm successful? He said the following: you will touch every single human being and infuse the agency with empathy. So that's my job description. And it's really mine to figure out how to do that every day at scale and how to encourage and train others to do that as well. And so my day-to-day could look like anything such as the following. I have 15-minute meetings with employees. They either proactively set up with me. I proactively set up with them because I hear they're doing great. Maybe they want to switch teams. I can smell smoke in the distance. I'm also involved in a lot of leadership meetings, strategic vision setting, resourcing meetings. I am fighting fires and whack-a-mole. I work with my wonderful team of HR professionals. We changed the title. I should say I changed the title from HR to People and Experience when I took this role, because that is what common sense dictated. We take care of people and the experience that they have within our four walls and actually beyond. And I'm not quite sure of what the term human resource means. So still working through that. And really in every conversation I'm having, I really, truly am trying to get to the crux of what's happening with this person and help them find the solutions, help them open the door for themselves so that they can then spread their wings and thrive. And I might also be connecting them to others within our ecosystem that can help them open the door.
Okay, I wanted to clarify even further. So in terms of the people experience department, are you leading that department? Are you part of that department? What's the relationship there?
So when I first started the job, I was leading it. There was no one else. And I had said to Gary, I don't come from HR. And he said, you'll hire a phenomenal team around you. I have hired a phenomenal team. And there is a woman named Jennifer Ruza who runs the team. She reports into me. I will say that I believe everyone on their job description and on their signature needs to have the word people and experience next to them, because I don't think it is just something that resides in a people and experience department. I think you touched on this in the intro already, that culture is everywhere, and culture is everyone's responsibility to co-cultivate and to take part in.
Wonderful. So what you're pioneering is definitely part of this next wave or 21st century organizational structure. And some call it the HR 3.0, HR 1.0, the starting point of more administrative HR 2.0, strategic HR, business partners, but HR 3.0, people and culture and experience, where you become internal advisors and coaches. And it's not just a strategic voice, but helping everyone ingrain culture all around the organization. But what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think you use the magic word coach, which I think the HR professional is moving into that world of coach, of guide, of Sherpa, if you will, and more importantly, of partner. And I think the partner piece has gotten lost because people have lost trust in the HR organization. And so why would you want to partner with anyone that makes you feel like you're wrong or like you're not to be trusted or you're guilty before innocent? And I think that's where we've seen a lot of the world of HR kind of get put into that corner. You and I both know that people don't join HR departments and take master's degrees in HR because they don't like people. They don't want to help. They do want to help. And it's just a matter of finding voice at that company or organization that you're with, making sure that your voice is heard when you're in that HR department. But more than that, making sure that your CEO or your board or whomever knows how valuable the voice of the head of people is, because they are proactively on the field.
Exactly. Well, I just want to acknowledge, as we looked into our listeners, we found three audiences. One is HR practitioners, around half. A quarter were business leaders that are interested in understanding this idea of leading with culture. And the remaining quarter were professional coaches who also want to understand what are leaders working on these days. So I'll be asking some questions from different angles. And now this one was about helping the people and culture practitioners, because I know a lot of them are looking for ways of transforming within. But I'm glad to hear your acknowledgement on how coaching and them building their coaching skills is one of their ways of building influence. So maybe any specifics on the coaching skills and helping not just HR practitioners, but all leaders build and practice some coaching skills?
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways to go about that. I mean, one, you can take coaching classes, you can become a certified coach. But even before that, do you know how and are you interested in holding space with another human being? Do you know how and are you interested in removing yourself from that, removing your ego, removing the fact that you have to have the answers? It's a really big step to take, and it's one that requires a lot of humility, and also understanding the role of a coach is to guide. It is not to open up an encyclopedia and say, this is exactly how you should work through that problem. Each and every individual is unique. Each and every problem is unique, even though, as I said in the beginning, there are patterns. So are you self-aware enough to know where you begin and end, and that other person begins and ends? And can you create that space? Can you fill that space with non-judgment? Can you fill that space with neutrality? Can you fill that space with the solutions? And I say that plural, many different solutions or ideas to go about taking action. That's what I would say first and foremost, even before you take the coaching classes. Are you that person? Is that an interest of yours? And I hone in again on the humility needed, because you, coming from maybe a more authoritative place, having a bigger title, whatever that stuff is, that doesn't matter really, but it matters, need to recognize that what you say will have influence on another person. And so how do you want to influence that person? With your subjective thoughts or with objective ideas?
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Leading with Culture. Many leaders are expected to manage culture, but are not equipped to lead with culture. At Maslow, we provide culture analytics, culture training, and coaching on how to lead with culture. In other words, we provide research and data-driven culture and leadership transformation. Our corporate programs include research in the design, where we measure the pre and post impact of our leadership and coaching programs. We have 3 pillars of our work. Number 1, culture transformation. Our research on the changing employee needs in the post-COVID era created a brand new approach called Culture-Actualization. The employee engagement measures and systems we're currently using were designed 10 to 20 years before and are not capturing the needs of this post-COVID era. Leadership development. Leading with Culture and Leader as a Coach are our signature programs helping leaders on this next chapter. Number 3, coaching. We develop large-scale corporate coaching programs and offer ICF-accredited coach certifications. Reach out to us to get more information at maslowleadership.com. Well, I love, Claude, how you bring into any conversation a lot of awareness and self-awareness. So it's not knowing about, you can know about something a lot, know about coaching, know about leadership, know about HR, right? But the being side is what you're tackling. And you use this in such simple language words but this heart-driven approach you're bringing, it relates a lot to a self-actualization of an individual, whether we call it inner work, self-awareness, self-actualization. So I'd like to take that and move towards a little bit of our geeking portion of our conversation. And we both love that. And I'm a huge fan of, obviously, Abraham Maslow, and I pay huge respect, and I take pride in not just being inspired, but hoping to continue his vision and work in the 21st century. We're not just carrying it over exactly as we're inspired and learn from him, but we do research in the 21st century post-COVID era. But I'm going to go back to the origins on how he acknowledges some basic needs we share as a species, how we share some relational psychological needs of belonging and esteem, but also, as you mentioned, some self-actualization needs of our uniqueness. Who am I? Who am I becoming? And who can I be? So I'd love to hear your comments on this idea of self-actualization, inner work, and maybe from, again, transpersonal psychology, vertical development. But what is it what do you think you're talking about behind this? And tell us the psychology of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm speaking mostly about self-awareness, otherwise known as self-actualization, which is the understanding of self, the understanding of, to be transpersonal about it, the hero's journey, which I believe we all take in many different formats in our lives, meaning we could take it once or we could take it 300 times. It doesn't really matter. We will go through the hero's journey no matter what. We will all experience the myth of Persephone, the phoenix rising. We will all go through these transformations in our lives. To be self-actualized, to be self-aware, is to understand that this will happen or that this has just happened. And this is what I've gleaned from that dark space, from that place of awakening, from that breaking through. And so that's really what I mean. And it's interesting because, Generation Z is coming up here into the workplace and the younger millennials. And, self-actualization is a lifetime journey. It's not, you don't graduate at 16 and here's your diploma and thank you very much. You've hit the top of Maslow's pyramid. That's not how it goes. On and on and on we go. And I hope by the time we all take our last breath, we will have reached a level of self-actualization that is of comfort to us, where we can be one with ourselves, where we can find inner light, where we can find inner peace and be still to an extent.
Exactly. And we decided to use the word not self-actualized, ED past tense, but self-actualizing leaders and teams and organizations to kind of frame that it's a process, it's ongoing. And Maslow's, when by the way, here's one of the books, which is the unpublished manuscripts of Abraham Maslow and his journal. So I've been studying his thinking, how his thinking evolved, and it's lovely. In the first half of his career, he was thinking of the progression of needs a bit more linearly, but second half he acknowledges they're at constant interplay. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So it's not just like I'm forever self-actualized. It's all those movements happening. Hence it's important to understand as a leader to understand your own waves of awareness and ups and downs and others' ups and people's ups and downs.
It's so important today more than ever, I think, to understand the fluidity of life and the fluidity of emotion and the fluidity of life's ups and downs, to your point. Because when you can have self-compassion and empathy for yourself, it's easier to have for another, to truly have for another. And both of them are, I will say, they take time.
Exactly. And as part of this self-actualization journey, we found one of the helpful tools is to contemplate on one's North Star, right? Our purpose, vision, values, strengths, and our past, present, future. And I found that one of the nice entryway, when you ask people directly, what are your values? It's not always easy to talk about that. Sometimes it becomes 2 checklists. Here are my list of values versus a deeper thinking. I found the Jungian archetypal thinking, which I know is a topic you love as well, and acknowledging who's that deep persona ingrained in me. How could I kind of acknowledge and tell, like mine is, I'm a teacher, like my archetypal energy is a teacher. I love learning, teaching, and an explorer. I love exploring new ideas, new concepts. So what are some of your archetypes?
I'm so glad you mentioned this. The healer is the primary archetype of mine. The explorer and adventurer. I have some teacher in me as well, but the healer is the main one. I think that I'm very in touch with on a daily basis. And I don't say healer to be hubristic. I say healer because I'm comfortable in this place. It's a strength of mine, and it's altruistic. It's for and in the service of others. That's all I want. My grand purpose is to bring to be of joyful service to people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I have a few hats. One is a leader, a coach, but also a researcher, academic as well. And during my master's, I was writing a contemplative paper, a reflective paper, and I wrote in one paragraph, I know the intention of this program or this course or this paper is not healing, but I find a lot of healing on the self-reflection. And my professor challenged me that, like, yes, learning is part of healing. Like, why is it that healing is something different? Like, so she challenged my thinking that through learning about self, learning about others, we actually find healing. And that's a process towards being a whole person or self-actualized. So what are your thoughts about learning and healing, and how does that work together?
Oh my goodness. It's so interesting because healing and learning, I definitely see the tie-in to, but I also see there's an enormous process of unlearning that might need to happen on the healing journey, on the journey to shedding skin and to reemerging. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I have two young children. And so while I'm learning to parent, I'm learning to be a child. I'm learning again. In many ways, I'm unlearning some of the things and some of the patterns that I took with me as a young person, and really hoping that I can course correct in many ways as I am now guiding these children. So I think unlearning is a big part of this.
Exactly. Learning and unlearning. There's a great cycle there. Same on my side. Well, at least I have to on my side. One of the hardest roles to learn about and evolve was, again, parenting for me. I think like anything business, we can solve it. We'll find solutions to it, right? But new roles in life make us evolve as well. And I think in this new reality, new normal after COVID, we're acknowledging that human beings, we're not just our work selves and bringing our whole selves to work with different roles. Now, on one side, leaders are really challenged by this because they're not as equipped or trained to manage that side, right? Like the previous thinking is that, well, I'm my expertise is leading operations, leading this work, leading the marketing, but now I'm expected to manage their well-being, their roles in life, and all this thing. And I can see many leaders in programs, they are struggling, and burnouts on the management level, leadership level are as high as employees. So what are your thoughts about that? How can leaders acknowledge and manage this whole person in the workplace?
I mean, it's a phenomenal question. It's the $25 billion question. I think a lot of it has to start with taking care of ourselves, and that's a very difficult place to start because we often put ourselves last, certainly as leaders and managers. There are very oftentimes as a leader, there is no one looking after you. So there's a lot of pressure on you to look after you as you're looking after 200 people, whatever that is. So that's the first thing I'll say is I go back to this need to work through knowledge of self, your own energy, understand the management of your own energy rather than time management. I think that's very linear, but to be able to manage your energy and then help others manage their energy. When are they most productive? When do they have a dip in their energy? When do they need to go take a lunch break or walk outside for 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Our life has been dictated around the 9 to 5 for so long, work-life balance, but it's life. Work is a part of that pie called life, as are many other things in that pie. But I definitely think that's a flip that we will see happen in these next 10 years or so. So it'll become, life work or work as a part of life. And then fundamentally, I think in order to check in on your people, you need to know what you're looking for. What are the signs? Because not everyone is going to be able to say I'm burnt out. They just might have an outburst on a Zoom or an outburst in the room, or their work output decreases and their performance decreases because their anxiety levels are through the roof. So these are things that we need to be helping our managers and leaders identify today, just like we need to help our managers and leaders understand the importance of unconscious bias in the workplace and how we need to get better around language that we use. So that's a whole conversation, and I think a very fluid curriculum for a leader today to be able to take on as an add-on to their day job, if you think about that, because they haven't had to worry about the well-being of their people for so long, and now all of a sudden, Sally is burnt out and John just made someone cry and so forth and so on's dog is in the hospital and someone has had a death in the family and someone got engaged, and there's all of these mixtures of feelings. So for me, it comes back to this real ability to hold space for another person. And holding space is a way of making someone feel safe. And that right there, the safety, for me is the alpha and the omega. It's the beginning, middle, and the end. anything can happen as long as that person feels safe. We will get someplace. We will be in action somehow, but we have to start there. So that, I think, is an enormous ask of leaders today.
Oh, that's beautiful, Claude. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I love how you keep bringing the vision to that ability to hold space and that high self-awareness. Again, our language, the self-actualization. Now, just interesting, I'm going to just flash a picture for a second. And we have one of the key kind of guiding models we use as part of coaching for self-actualization is working on our North Star, working on our being, doing, past, present, future. But the reason why I'm showing this, the heart of the matter for us is tapping into our wise selves. And that's like at the middle. Can we go there? Can we stay there? Because in the middle of the purpose, in the middle of a North Star, the wise self. I'm hearing you again. I feel really comfortable moving between language, but this idea of helping us reach our wise selves. Now we have high moments, low moments. They're all part of us. It's funny. Some people say like, oh, that wasn't me. That wasn't like our low selves are part of us as well. But we also have a wise self, which we can tap into. And you keep encouraging to explore us, go to that place, that space, a lot of inner work and self-work there. So I really appreciate what you're sharing.
Thank you.
Now, how do you help leaders? So have you found any ways, approaches, trainings, methodology? How it's a journey, first of all. It's not like a single thing. You do one thing and you're enlightened, right? It's a process. How are you weaving in, whether it's an L&D or helping them? Like, how do we take leaders one step further, 1% towards that direction?
Spending time with them. Not assuming they will learn through osmosis, not assuming they will learn because they spoke with Kathy in the hallway and I spoke with Kathy. That's all wonderful, but spending time with each and every leader and helping them with their self-actualization journey, to use your words. And, I see that every single day because we're only human. And for example, I'm working with an incredibly bright leader, probably one of the IQ smarter leaders I've ever worked with. And this person is not great with people. And yet he's in a high leadership role. And he has some challenges communicating in a way in which people won't shut down or go into fight, flight, flee. And so that's one of the things we're working on, which is where is it coming from in you that you need to constantly prove that you are smart? You don't need to prove that. It's known. Now, what we need you to do is work on your communication skills so people want to hear what you have to say. And all they're hearing right now is what they've done wrong. And that's not an atmosphere or an arena for learning at all. And there's no safety there. It's just fear. So it's really I spend a lot of time with people listening, reflecting back, and then working together to see if there's another way that actually will make them feel better too. Because, I'm just coming from common sense here, but I know when I'm off balance or I am overly emotional because I'm angry or frustrated for a long duration of time, I am definitely not coming from my wise self. I'm reacting. I'm triggered. I'm activated. And, I don't expect anyone to take anything great from me when I'm in those places.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Leading with Culture. I wanted to share what we do at Maslow Leadership in a minute. Many leaders are expected to manage culture, but are not equipped to lead with culture. At Maslow, we provide culture analytics, culture training, and coaching on how to lead with culture. In other words, we provide research and data-driven culture and leadership transformation. Our corporate programs include research in the design, where we measure the pre and post impact of our leadership and coaching programs. We have 3 pillars of our work. Number 1, culture transformation. Our research on the changing employee needs in the post-COVID era created a brand new approach called Culture-Actualization. The employee engagement measures and systems we're currently using were designed 10 to 20 years before and are not capturing the needs of this post-COVID era. Leadership development. Leading with Culture and Leader as a Coach are our signature programs helping leaders on this next chapter. Number 3, coaching. We develop large-scale corporate coaching programs and offer ICF-accredited coach certifications. Reach out to us to get more information at maslowleadership.com. I love how consistent your message is on the presence, just the presence in the moment, in the relationship. And that's how you role model. And I think that's a great example on, I'm going to just flash one more visual and just explain. I noticed the previous one, I didn't do a great job at explaining the North Star, but they can have a look at our webpage. What I'm showing now is these 2 words only, self-actualization and culture-actualization, which have 2 arrows pointing to each other as a circle, as a cycle. And what we like reminding is that an individual's self-actualization is totally interdependent with the team and the workplace culture, and realizing potential is a holistic process. It's both and. It's not either or. It's a both and. And culture actualization is a brand new term we coined in the literature, which is starting to take off in HR and organizational behavior and coaching literature. But what are your thoughts on this movement between the systems, maybe also, right? So the organization, the team, the individual, and it starts by knowing thyself. That's what you keep mentioning. But tell us a little bit more about that movement of the system and how it works collectively in your thought, in your view.
Yeah, I love the idea of, and the phrase cultural actualization. And I think both self-actualization and cultural actualization, as we know, are fluid and they are always in motion. But they both feed each other, as your arrow showed. And for the person that doesn't have the self-actualization, who's working on it, has never heard of it, doesn't really care about it yet, it's never come into their consciousness, they will learn about themselves through the cultures that they inhabit. Their family systems, their soccer team, their work systems, their church systems, whatever that is, their fraternities, all of that stuff, because those are all cultures that are feeding into self. You are partaking in that culture. So really, how do you show up in those cultures, I think, is one of the greatest questions to ask someone who doesn't yet feel like they are working on their self-actualization or their self-awareness, because again, maybe it's never been in their consciousness. So, there's so many different ways we show up in a culture. We show up in the herd, going along with the flow, peer pressure. We show up because we are demanding change. We are activists. We are friendly. We are warm. We are always, each and every individual in a culture is part of the minestrone soup, like it or not. And sometimes in that minestrone soup, you have too much tomato. You don't have enough oregano. You don't have a bay leaf. You don't have some of the other ingredients, most likely because either you've hired for skills for culture fit, so I have all the same, right? Or you haven't put enough diversity into that team, into that culture, so that it all looks very similar. Everyone came from the same schools in the Pacific Northwest, for example, or everyone has a friend that worked for a friend that's at the company. So I think there's things to think about when it comes to you feeding the culture and the culture feeding you, and that relationship that is constantly in motion. And one of the words I use quite often is the co-cultivation of culture. I'm not cultivating the culture. The culture isn't my responsibility. It's all of our responsibilities. I am putting the essence of Claude into the culture today, just as Sam is putting the essence of Sam and Billy's putting the essence of Billy. Those essences are not all going to be alike. So it's to answer the question, I agree with the chart, and I think it's literally the snake eating its tail constantly, the Ouroboros, which is renewal.
Exactly. Well, my mind is going to 1,000 places. My silence was actually about, where do I go from here? Like so many doors opening in front of us, but also being mindful of the time. Thank you for also, inspiring me, because there are some leaders which inspire me in terms of what we're sharing as the Maslow leadership, and is that it's, of course, you get to think sometimes about like we're pioneering a new leadership organizational paradigm. And there are some organizations, some leaders adopting this early adopters, but many are laggers. And How do we bring this to mainstream? That's what we're doing. And so what I see is, again, I love bringing language, as you're noticing, and like defining. It's not about the amount of knowledge. It's about the clarity of the concepts. Most organizations see culture as North Star, in terms of culture as values on the wall, culture as leadership behaviors, principles. But you're exactly describing what I call culture as employee experience, culture as lived experience in the moment. And here's the thing, in our research, which our listeners know well, and if they're new listeners, we re-envisioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs from the famous triangle towards concentric circles, which we believe represents better the 21st century direction of acknowledging we're more interconnected as human beings. I think COVID really showed that as well, but also the progression of self-actualization. It's a journey. It's a growth journey. And in our research, the way we looked into the changing employee needs in the workplace, and those that are interested can read our free Culture-Actualization ebook, where we summarize our research. And we found the changing employee needs in the workplace in terms of employee experience. So the basic needs at work: do people have the right tools, technology, training, support, onboarding, rewards, the environment, and physical well-being. The next second circle is psychological needs, where it's about connections, inclusion, collaboration, LND, and what I call the three cousins: appreciation, recognition, celebration. And the third and last circle, the highest, the largest one, is that space of self-actualization. Are leaders embodying purpose? Are leaders role modeling a people-focused culture? Are they empowering their people? Are they coaching, mentoring? Are they working cohesively? And is there a meaningful impact? And we have further findings around these. But what I'm hearing from you is exactly, it's not just about the values on the wall. Culture is, do you understand your people? Do you connect with your people? Do you truly hear? Like I find the language of needs is really empowering EQ and empathy, because it's not about me assuming what you need. I want you to understand your needs. Right. So I'm curious about your thoughts. What are your thoughts on understanding each other's needs, not assumed needs, but truly connecting and understanding, bringing this language to leaders so they can speak and learn and understand this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. And when a leader spends time with another person, they get to understand what the motivations of that person are. Do they want to get off work at 4:00 so they could go to every soccer game their child has? Do they want to make $1 million by the time they're 30? What is it? Every single one of us, we have our own goals, short or long-term goals. And understanding, taking time and sitting with someone and understanding what their world is all about and how you can help impact that, how you can help guide that. And again, taking yourself out of the equation. This is not about Claude being the hero impacting Tim. This is Claude merely being the guide for Tim to help find those next open doors for himself. So that's the really important part I love that obviously in this chart, it didn't show any of it. It's only about the human being and their needs within the workplace or within any type of culture. The interconnectedness is so spot on because things aren't linear. A road might be linear, but that's about it. There's no linear learning. There's no linear relationship. And so the interconnectivity, which also brings me to the interdependence that we all have on one another and how crucial that is in a culture, in a workplace, to understand that no one is on an island. And if they feel like they're on an island, we have done something incorrectly.
A lot of words of wisdom, Claude. Well, my last question is, as we're closing now, our main topic, it's leading with culture. And I think your message was crystal clear, but I would love you to just summarize one last time. How can leaders in today's post-COVID realm in organizations, how can they lead with culture?
The first way is to be yourself, to show up authentically as a vulnerable, courageous human being. There is no way we can ask others to do that unless we are not doing it ourselves. And so share some of yourself with others. We are all human. We have all been through the last 2.5 years together. None of us are immune to this COVID, right? We're all here. It is much more of an interconnected and interdependent world now than it ever has been in many ways. Listening is so crucial. Listening to learn, not listening to interject. Listening to learn and seeing where you can help take action, facilitate growth, facilitate change in another person by listening first. Those are the 3 steps I would take just off the top of my head. And I think the 4th one is really one that I believe we all need to be doing every day, which is thanking people. Sending a quick text, I appreciate you, on a Slack. Thank you so much. I love your energy. I got your back. Those types of things go miles and miles and miles for others.
Wonderful. Well, Claude, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And how can our listeners continue to follow you on LinkedIn? Would you encourage them to follow you on LinkedIn or else?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, those are the top places for me. And I love getting back to people that DM me. So please reach out, and thank you so much for this conversation, Tim.
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to keeping in touch.
You too.